Hello, and welcome to What Not to Do with ESL Writing, one of the SLCC Writing Across the College mini videos. These short videos introduce you to important issues relevant to student writing and learning. They simply ask you to think about these issues and consider how you engage with them in your teaching. Nothing more, nothing less. In this video, we look at the challenge of responding to writing assignments from students who did not grow up speaking English in their homes. Specifically, this video will cover 4 faculty responses that can actually cause harm to the educational success of these student writers. If you are interested, the Writing Across the College Transforming Talk, Working with ELL Writers, goes into more depth on how to help these students succeed. First of all, let's clarify some acronyms. ESL means English as a Second Language, and is the most common term used for instruction in English that takes place in an English-speaking location. EFL means English as a Foreign Language, and is the term used for instruction in English that takes place in a non-English speaking location. ELL means English Language Learner, or someone whose first language is not English, or who is not yet proficient in English. While ESL is the most familiar to people outside of the field of English language teaching and learning, it is also a tricky term to use because it suggests that English is the second language that a person is learning, wherein the reality is that many students who are identified as ESL already use multiple languages. Also, ESL describes the type of instruction rather than the students themselves. Therefore, for the rest of this video and all other Writing Across the College materials, this writing will be referred to as ELL Writing, Writing from English Language Learners. There are 4 main types of ELL student writers at SLCC. First, there are international students who tend to have had privileged educational experiences in their home countries and are attending college at SLCC. Second, there are students who are economic or political refugees to the U.S. These students may or may not have had significant schooling experiences prior to their arrival. Third, there are immigrant students who arrived in the U.S. as late teens or adults. They also may have varied educational experiences. Finally, there are students who came to the U.S. either as children or early teens and whose families spoke a language other than English in their homes. These are known as Generation 1.5 English language learners. They will have had schooling in the U.S. and are typically bi- or multilingual speakers, but their writing may carry some of the signals of ELL writing. All of these students will produce writing that is different from that produced by a native speaker of English. Differences may be found in mechanics, such as spelling, punctuation, prepositions, or articles, morphology, such as word endings and tense, sentence structure, word choice, paragraphing, organization, rhetorical approach, referencing, and more. To learn why this is, watch the WAC Transforming Talk, Working with ELL Writers. Knowing how to respond to ELL writing in a way that is instructional to the student, holds students to high academic standards, and is fair to native English-speaking students can be a challenge. There is no easy answer, nor will a single approach work for all ELL student writing. There are, however, a few responses that definitely do not help ELL students succeed. First, don't focus primarily on grammar. This may seem counterintuitive because ELL students are trying to become better writers in English. Pointing out grammatical concerns will help them to do so, right? Yes and no. Pointing out every mistake, error, or problem will overwhelm the student's abilities to integrate the corrections. At the same time, however, ELL writers may assume that if there are no grammatical concerns marked on their writing, they should earn an A grade, regardless of how well they meet the larger assignment criteria. One approach is to select 1 or 2 grammatical issues, not prepositions or articles, because those will always be a challenge and it's not worth your time to point them out, to focus on in the writing. Ask the student to pay attention to verb tenses, for example, or to make sure they have a subject in each sentence. By the time ELL students get to your classes, most have gone through multiple English classes and they're familiar with the rules. They just need to become fluid with implementing them while at the same time expressing meaning. Try to read for the meaning of the writing. If you can comprehend it fairly easily, the student is doing well. If you cannot understand it or have to struggle a lot, then the student needs to start over, preferably with a conversation with you, or with the Student Writing Center or the Academic Literacy Center. Second, don't give wide open or vague writing assignments to ELL students. These assignments, which some faculty think help students learn how to solve open-ended problems, are terribly difficult for ELL students to understand. They can also be terribly difficult for native English-speaking students as well, but you might be setting up your ELL students for failure with them. For support on developing more specific writing assignments that are still problem-solving, watch the nitty-gritty of writing assignments offered by the Writing Across the College program. Third, if you are providing feedback on drafts for ELL writers, don't ask general questions or provide an overall statement at the end. While native English-speaking students might be able to interpret your questions or track between an end comment and specific selections of their writing, ELL students have a very difficult time with this. Make your comments more direct and instructive, and locate them in the margins near the place you want students to focus on. Additionally, try to refrain from using language like, "this isn't clear," or vague. Instead, you could use options like, "you need to show how this point relates to the next one," or "you need to give some examples of this point you are making." These will provide direction that ELL writers can respond to. For that matter, try not to use the "not clear" or vague responses for all students. No one intentionally writes in a way that they believe is vague. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, don't expect writing from ELL students ever to be the same as writing from native English-speaking students. Just as people who learn a language other than their home language will almost always retain a verbal accent, an echo, if you will, of their home language, they will also retain written accents. No matter how much writing in English a non-native English-speaking adult will do, an accent will remain. To expect otherwise is to put ELL students at an institutional disadvantage compared to their native English-speaking peers. When we speak of fairness in terms of ELL writers, we need to take this into consideration. What is fair? To expect them to write in a way that is linguistically impossible for them to do? Or to expect them to work hard and continually improve as writers of English? Consider what you think is an acceptable written accent for your students and respond accordingly. If you are interested in looking more closely at how to support students writing in your classes, ELL or native English speakers, consider registering for other videos and workshops through the Office of Faculty Development or contact the Writing Across the College Director at wac@slcc.edu, call extension 3232, or check out the website at www.slcc.edu/WAC.